Welcome once again to our life study of the life of Moses. We are now on episode 2, wherein we see after the time when Moses was a fugitive and a shepherd in the land of Midian. So at this time, we'll ask our brother Craig to lead us in our discussion.
All right, great. Well, we have two passages we'll look at, and I think maybe what we'll do is we'll look at the first passage and then discuss it a bit, and then look at the second passage a bit, and then we can make some overall discussion as well. So the first passage is Exodus chapter 3, verses 1 through 10. And I'll read 2 verses, and then we'll just rotate.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now Moses was shepherding the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the far side of the desert and came to the mountain of God, to Horeb. The angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire from within a bush. He looked, and the bush was ablaze with fire, but it was not being consumed.
So Moses thought, I will turn aside to see this amazing sight. Why does the bush not burn up? When the Lord saw that he had turned aside to look, God called to him from within the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And Moses said, Here I am.
God said, Do not approach any closer. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. He added, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, and the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Then Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God.
The Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt. I have heard their cry because of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrows. I have come down to deliver them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up from that land to a land that is both good and spacious, to a land flowing with milk and honey, to the region of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites.
And now indeed the cry of the Israelites has come to me, and I have also seen how severely the Egyptians oppressed them. So now go, and I will send you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of...
And I'll read 11 and 12 here as well. Moses said to God, Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh, or that I should bring the Israelites out of Egypt? He replied, Surely I will be with you, and this will be a sign to you that I have sent you. When you bring the people out of Egypt, you and they will serve God at this mountain. All right, thank you. So for me, the first question that I want you to think about, I'd love to hear, is your thoughts about why God revealed himself as a burning bush and how Moses reacts to this. So thoughts about that, or any of that spring something to mind?
Yes, remember he's in the wilderness, so it's quite hot in the place. And usually burning bush happens normally. Like if I'm a shepherd, I'm taking care of sheep, it's hot, and then suddenly a bush would caught fire, and that's normal. It will burn down, and no problem. So it's like a natural, occurrence. But in this case, it was a special burning bush. It didn't burn down. So Moses was curious. What's going on here? Why is this bush keep on burning? So that creates the curiosity, and I think that's how God was hooking him, and then was going to call him to choose him to become the leader of the Hebrews. And I think that's key there, because sometimes in our ordinary life, something happens extraordinary, and if we're not able to see it, we might miss it. And God is talking to us.
Yeah. That's a beautiful symbolism. Or sometimes we're the ordinary people that God uses in extraordinary ways.
There.
That's so nice.
Yeah. That's a good insight. So, ordinary people doing extraordinary things for the Lord.
For me, somehow, in reality, we experienced like this forest fire, grass burn because of the heat. So same goes as this. Like, if it's a normal, maybe Moses will not be curious anymore.
Mm-mm.
But God made a special way for him to notice.
Mm.
In some way, like we Christians, or before we became Christian, for me, I've noticed my neighbor every Sunday they're so loud singing praise and worship song. And it's like, what on Sunday? Rest day, what is this? Their band is so loud praising the Lord. Then I said, that's not the way on how you praise God or worship God. You have to be solemn, something like that. But later on, there's a church near our house. I just pass along every time there. So the door is closed. It's a glass door, but it's an old one. You have to push it. So no one is standing there. And I just kept on noticing there's a big cross there. So but few years after, that church is where God want me and my family. So that's how I journey my Christian life. Got baptized there. So same as here. Yeah, I mean, God gives a sign that very special for you to get attracted on, or to look on, so that you can grow closer to Him. I mean, I can relate my life to this verse Pastor or Brother Craig mentioned. Yeah.
That's why every time we're talking about, has God called you to do something, we phrase it as, have you seen your burning bush, or has He appeared to you in the burning bush? Yeah.
So what else does this maybe teach us about how God comes to us or calls us or talks to us? I don't know. Is there anything else there? So I'm pretty interested in his response. He's a shepherd, went about his business. He sees this unusual thing. It's not until he turns to it that then God starts talking. Starts talking to him. But then as soon as he gets close, God tells him, don't get too close. What do you think that means? Or does that speak to you in any way? Or
maybe for me, God was warning him that it says here the place is, I think it's holy. It's a holy place. So sometimes maybe we just need to be warned in our lives, and not just to let God reveal Himself to you first before you proceed, something like that. How about you, Pastor Adam?
What I am thinking just now, because Kuya Craig pressing on that question, because Moses is now getting curious, and then he gets closer, and then God said, okay, do not get any closer. But it's like, is God also wants boundaries. Maybe in our term now, like boundaries. But for him, the boundary is because he is holy and we are not. So maybe he's drawing that to Moses. Like, even if that bush is not being consumed, you might be consumed if you get any closer.
Yeah. And that's the whole story of the Bible or the gospel, God reconciling us to Himself. But there won't be a need for reconciliation if there's no barrier. So there must be a barrier that needs to be overcome, sort of thing.
And then taking off the sandals, there's a lot of, maybe we would say Middle Eastern culture. When you enter someone's house, you need to take off your sandals. Part of it is respect for the owner of the house, to have fellowship in terms of eating together. That's why, of course, as modern day people, we don't usually take off our shoes off because it might smell. but of course, we understand the context, to leave what is dirty behind and to really enter a clean space, to connect with God. And I think Moses understood that, because when God told him to take off his sandals, he knew what was going on, that it was really holy ground. It was not something to mess around with. And I think in our day and age, we have taken sacred things as too ordinary, and we haven't really taken out our sandals, but we brought it into the house of God, and that creates a lot of trouble in terms of boundaries. We're bringing a lot of maybe our culture, our past, our baggages, right, into the presence of God, and these baggages needs to be taken out and needs to be, in a sense, burned away, right, in the very presence of God.
Yeah. Can I add? Brother Craig? So it says here in verse 6, the Lord added that I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. And then Moses hid his face because he was afraid. So yeah, out of curiosity, of course Moses wants to approach, maybe to touch the bush or something, go closer. But God is very may concern siya that I don't know, maybe Moses can get burned if he just closes.
He comes close.
Yeah. So I think the beautiful part of this, like God explained of who He is, so that Moses will know, and there will be respect to the Holy One, of course. So yeah, I think that's why God told Moses to pick up his sandals, something like that. Well, I mean, kanina, sinabi mo kasi, like, hindi basta-basta yung approach ka lang kay God. So, we have to know who He is talaga. Kasi, some, di ba, maybe some people would think na, Diyos, parang, is it something, hindi siya holy? I mean, that you can just go approach Him, something like that. So, I think this part, for me, parang, yeah, you have to know God first, then so that you can respect who He is, and yeah.
Well, so I really like that point. We've talked in the previous lesson we worked through. It's been a lot about Moses figuring out who he is. You know, where Moses starts off. Moses is the prince of Egypt, and later Moses is a shepherd, but also a fugitive. I kind of feel like, just how you said, this focuses more on who God is. I feel like almost a shift here, where, in fact, I think the passages here goes on. 7 through 10 talks more about what God is going to do, and then 11 through 12 here showing His subside. What strikes you about that? Are there insights you have about this as God's kind of now sharing His plan with Moses?
I do wonder how much Moses already knew about this God. Because even though he was able to grow up with his mom for a little bit, the rest of the time he was a prince of Egypt. So when God introduced Himself as the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, did Moses already know how meaningful that is? On the one hand, it seems to be the case because he hid his face and he was afraid to look at this God. So he was afraid of this God. So he must have heard the stories of how great this God already is. But then later on, in verse 11, 12, or rather 13, I go to the Israelites. If I go to the Israelites and tell them the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is His name? What should I say to them? And then God tells Moses, I am that I am. So He was still referring the God of your fathers, not the God of our fathers, sent me to you. So it's more of a question, I guess. I'm wondering how much Moses already knows about this God. But definitely, by the time that God reveals His name to Moses, he was about to know more about who He is.
And this is, I think, the first time. And so verse 14 is the first time wherein God presents Himself as I am who I am. This is the name of God presented as for the Hebrews to know that He is Yahweh. I am in terms of present tense, rather than I was or I will, but He is the ever-present God who hears their cries, that He is there to lift the burden of His people, and He's choosing Moses now. And I think to go back to what Brother Dennis is sharing, to know who God is, and that becomes the new identity of Moses, from being a prince of Egypt to a fugitive and shepherd, now to becoming a leader, a chosen leader for the people of God to be taken out of Egypt's misery.
I just want to add quickly, Rev Hem, this name that God gives to Moses. So the early Christians understood this to refer to the eternality of God, that He is the eternal God. He has always existed. He is uncreated. And if we think of Moses as the writer of the Torah, of Genesis, and how the world was created, then he is identifying this God with that God who created the world, which is very important, because a lot of people say, if God only introduced himself as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, then he's just a tribal God. He's only the God of Israel. But with this name, it seems that God is revealing to Moses, I am more than the God of this tribe. I'm the God who created the world. I'm the God of all nations, supposedly.
And that creates the controversy, like once you fast forward to Jesus' time, when he claims to be I am. So that creates a lot of tension with the Jewish mind. How can you be a man and claiming to be I am, who is God? And so that is the connection in terms of the Old Testament, New Testament, overarching presentation of the name of God and how he is revealed to us. But interestingly enough, because Jesus is called Emmanuel, God is with us, and now I am presents himself, I am with you. As you go back to Egypt, please present my name to them, because I am basically Emmanuel. I'll be with you in your suffering, and I will rescue you from your slavery and to give you a future and a hope.
That name is so meaningful.
And also, can I also add about, besides God is now introducing who he is to Moses, I like their conversations, like back and forth, like God will speak to him, and then it shows that he can hear God because he's speaking, he's also responding to that words of God. And now he can also ask questions. Who am I that I could go back to this Pharaoh? And what will I tell them if I would go? Who's this God that I would tell them? And it's like, so it shows that God is not distant and he speaks. And also, he's not a wooden God that who couldn't speak. So I like how that goes, the conversation thing.
A living God.
A living God.
Yeah, not a wooden. That's great.
Yeah.
So I have a few principles that I I think you've mentioned most of these. One of them I said is that maybe that God draws us to himself by revealing himself and speaks to us when we turn to him. So it's some of the things you just mentioned. It brings us into this conversation. He understands the suffering and experiences of his people, and he promises to deliver them. It's not just that he sees and hears, but he has a plan to save and deliver as well. And that he promises to be with us and accomplish this work with us, alongside us. That presumably God could have done all these things without Moses. He could have had a big burning bush like in the middle of Egypt and just had these things come out. So those were some of the principles that I saw. Anything else you want to add to that or amplify?
I'm looking at the passage because he went back, right? But before going back, I'm looking at verse 16, chapter 3. It says here, "Go and bring together the elders of Israel and tell them, the Lord, the God of your fathers, appeared to me, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying, I have attended carefully to you and to what has been done to you in Egypt." So again, there's a repetition of God knowing, remembering the suffering, and of course remembering his promise for his people. And then I have promised that I will bring you, verse 17, bring you up out of the affliction of Egypt to the land of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, Jebusites. There you go. You have the promise to be fulfilled, to bring them to a land that is flowing with milk and honey.
So some questions I had that were maybe to help us think about what this might mean to us is I had a few. One is like, what would God need to do to get your attention? Maybe this is again not for us. Maybe this is for the listeners. What would God need to do to get your attention, draw your attention to Him, and get you to follow and trust Him? That's one of my questions. And then maybe even like we saw a lot of questions or fear in Moses, right? So maybe what portions of God calling are you afraid to follow? Maybe you're sensing in your life that you need assurance that God is with you and will sustain and guide you through that.
Yeah, showing the courageous faith of Moses. Of course, eventually as he obeys. But of course, there's a lot of questions still. Moses is still raising the question in this episode: who am I? Why am I going back? And of course, God is repeating Himself. He's saying, "No, I will be with you. We will go. You will go, and bring my people out of Egypt." So that's the very purpose.
In the next chapter, as their conversation continues, Moses shows that he was still very afraid to do that. He felt he didn't have the capability to speak well, for example. And I feel like it still affected him, his failure from the past. So he was afraid to just say yes to this calling from God. Based on your question a while ago about what would it take for the Lord, for you to listen to the Lord's calling for you. But we can understand, we can identify with Moses because all of us have experienced failure, I'm pretty sure. And after experiencing failure, we might not want to try again. And God was in some ways impatient with Moses because He got angry when Moses said, "I really can't speak well, Lord." But at the same time, God conceded and gave him Aaron, his brother, to be his spokesperson. So God cares about our weaknesses and understands our struggles and helps us to obey. So I think that's a good principle to remember also.
I like that every fear that Moses had, God had an answer for.
Yes.
But even the Aaron thing, I think, was he really wanting God to like give him speaking ability? So maybe God answered him in a way he didn't expect. Maybe Moses really wanted, make me this eloquent speaker. And God kind of said, no, you're going to stay like you are. I have other ways to provide. But even in your weakness, kind of, I'm still going to work. Anyway, I have more thoughts.
but I love that picture. It shows like you need to depend on God.
Yes.
Maybe if I would give you what you want, like, straighten your language or how you speak, maybe you could trust yourself after that. But I love that. That's a new insight for me. Like maybe sometimes, in my life as well, I couldn't receive what I'm asking for, and God would give me another to help me, but that will lead me to rely on Him, love it.
To trust, trust. Even in the difficulty, the Lord gives us the opportunity to trust Him. And He brings people around us to help us. And that takes a lot of humility as well. And interestingly enough, Aaron knows where Moses is living. So maybe God was the one who told him, "Hey, go to your brother." So the first part of Moses' life, key figure is Miriam, and now comes in Aaron. So you have the involvement of the family now coming together to fulfill God's purpose in Moses' life, which is interesting. God brings people around us to help us along the journey, to encourage us to fulfill God's purpose.
Yeah. Speaking of God's purpose, the second passage that we'll look at is when He starts to enact some of His plans. This is Exodus 7:14 through 24. And we'll read 2 verses at a time. I'll start with verse 14. Exodus 7, verse 14. The Lord said to Moses, "Pharaoh's heart is hard, and he refuses to release the people. Go to Pharaoh in the morning when he goes out to the water. Position yourself to meet him by the edge of the Nile and take in your hand the staff that was turned into a snake.
Tell him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has sent me to you to say, release my people, that they may serve me in the wilderness. But until now you have not listened.
This is what the Lord has said. By this you will know that I am the Lord. I am going to strike the water of the Nile with the staff that is in my hand, and it will be turned into blood. Fish in the Nile will die, the Nile will stink, and the Egyptians will be unable to drink water from the Nile.
Then the Lord said to Moses, tell Aaron, take your staff and stretch out your hand over Egypt's waters, over their rivers, over their canals, over their ponds, and over all their reservoirs, so that it becomes blood. There will be blood everywhere in the land of Egypt, even in wooden and stone containers. Moses and Aaron did so, just as the Lord had commanded. Moses raised the staff and struck the water that was in the Nile right before the eyes of Pharaoh and his servants, and all the water that was in the Nile was turned to blood.
Verse 21, when the fish that were in the Nile died, the Nile began to stink, so that the Egyptians could not drink water from the Nile. There was blood everywhere in the land of Egypt. Verse 22, but the magicians of Egypt did the same by their secret arts, and so Pharaoh's heart remained hard, and he refused to listen to Moses and Aaron, just as the Lord had predicted.
Right. So this happens after Moses has already asked Pharaoh to release the Hebrew people. And so this is the first of the what we call plagues. Thoughts on this plague as the first one, and maybe why blood, why the Nile? Any thoughts on this?
Maybe because they threw the babies in the Nile. So the Nile is filled with blood.
Oh, wow.
So that's a good connection.
Wow. Interesting.
So it was to kill the babies during the first, the early years of Moses.
Because the plagues are supposed to show God's judgment on Egypt. So it may be recalling their particular sin. There's a symbolism in that particular plague.
So the death of the innocents was shown in the water turning to blood.
And also later in the death of the firstborn. Or the 10th plague. Very nice inclusion.
Yeah, this is good. This is good. So there's a smell there. I hope you got the smell. What's the smell? It stinks. It stinks because of the death. It's blood. It's really stink. You know the smell of blood, and it's still the first plague.
Right.
But God is saying, okay, at this time Moses was willing to go. Right after he's willing to go, Aaron is the spokesperson, but he has now the courage because there are miracles that he can do by the power of God.
Oh, there's another reason I remembered. Because the Egyptians depended a lot on the Nile. It was like a river of life for them.
Yes.
So the fact that God turned it into blood and they couldn't drink from the Nile, again, that's a judgment meant for Egypt. Like, you can't depend on these things anymore.
Like, this is the central main thing that made them such an important city.
It irrigated their
crops.
plants and everything as well.
Only until now I realized that River Nile pala is a key part in this story of Moses, from the beginning, like a baby, and now until this part. Wow, yeah.
But we're dependent on coffee now.
Any other thoughts on maybe what why he's doing this? There's a couple of reasons I think he listed there. I'm interested in the fact that certainly the overall goal is to compel Pharaoh to release, but he also says this is so that they'll know that I'm God. So kind of I think showing. I know some have talked about that maybe even the Egyptians worshipped the Nile. They were seen as the god that brought them. It was so central to their life. It was the one who brought them power. So this is maybe an example of God revealing himself as the true God that's has the power over their false god of the Nile.
to really go against the gods of Egypt with the 10 plagues. To show that God is the true God, as you said, and the warrior is presenting himself as a warrior here, going against the supernatural powers of Egypt, and to really show Pharaoh who's in charge, who's really in charge, because he keeps on saying no, and because he has a hard heart. But as you know, as you go through the different plagues, there are times there that language changes. And God hardens Pharaoh's heart just to show his judgment all the more. Because if Pharaoh's heart is hardened, then he cannot turn. I mean, in terms of cannot repent. So he would continue in that hardness of heart. Eventually, the release of the Hebrews and the judgment of Egypt.
Yeah. I also feel sometimes because after some of the plagues, Pharaoh would repent for a while, right? But it's always just a momentary repentance. It's as if he hasn't actually gotten the message yet. That's why there needs to be another plague, another plague, another plague.
But I feel like this happens with me too.
Yeah.
Like I feel like there's times in my life where I feel like God really either rebukes or delivers me in some way, and I think, oh, now I'm committed, and now this is, and it doesn't take long for me to settle back into trusting myself or other things, and then He does it again. Yeah.
Of course, these plagues are supernatural. They're not natural in that sense because, in a sense, every day we see in the world plagues are happening. Maybe there's a hailstone, storm. There's a death in the livestock. So this happens in terms of normal day in, day out. But in this case, these are special.
Yeah.
These are like really going against the supernatural powers, principalities of Egypt. And God is like, I'm in charge here. So it's time to let my people go.
Right.
You've been oppressing them for this long.
Yeah.
How long?
Yeah. How long has it been since?
400?
Yeah.
I think it's debated how many years. Yeah.
But I love that comment because so the Nile, you could have said, the Nile, like there's some sort of like algae bloom or something, but it's not just the Nile, it's all the water that they'd even were in vessels. It's real specific, right?
Yeah.
All the water everywhere.
And then they have to dig.
They're trying to
dig other parts of the land so that they can get fresh water because they cannot drink already.
And then we see, I think it goes out of its way at times to show that it's supernatural. And I think the last two plagues are probably also extreme examples of that. The ninth one is the sun being blotted out. And then the 10th one, right, is the death of the firstborn of all the people in the land and the animals.
And that's scary. And what the instruction of God, of course, to Moses was to tell the people that they have to stay in their houses and that they have to slay a lamb and then put the lamb's blood on the doorpost so that the angel of that will just pass over them once the killing of the firstborn of all of Egypt will happen. So that is a scary time, and then they need to get ready to leave Egypt because that was the last straw. Last straw, right? Last straw, not last straw.
Last
straw. Okay. Okay.
I think it's important to point out that these plagues are special because sometimes we might look at calamities that happen around us today and we immediately assume it's God's judgment, but it may not be. It may be, just a natural occurrence, or it may be because of our neglect as human beings. We did not take care of the environment. And so, in some ways, it is a consequence of our actions. But we have to be very careful not to say that everything bad that happens is a judgment of God against people. Sometimes it's not.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes we cause it. I'm thinking of examples of plagues that I caused.
But I also want to echo on that, what Kuya Craig mentioned about the blood, everywhere. That's what intrigued me the most. it just came to mind, like sometimes God really wants the attention of the people. Is this like how God wants, to get their attention? Not just the blood on the Nile, but everywhere. And even, as you mentioned, very specific, not just everywhere, but even in wooden and stone containers. Like not connected to the river Nile, right? Like it wouldn't flow.
Maybe like in our water bottle.
Yeah, right. So it's like separate, but it will be blood. There will be blood. So maybe God shows that He's the God, the real God, that who couldn't do the magicians, who couldn't do that,
Right.
like that. And also to add to that, after that blood, in verse 20, and then this the verse mentioned about Moses and Aaron, that they did what the Lord commanded them. But it's kind of speaks to me their confidence that God was with them. God is with them. And so they are doing everything what God has been telling them to do. And it's really good to have a companion also doing these miracles, right? So that's what I love about this one. And now the Bible is also stating that how they did that, like striking the water in the Nile, and then the pharaohs, their eyes, seeing all these things. So it shows that God is is a God working miracle God. Is that correct? Okay, let me correct that one. But and then for us, we can be confident, not because of our own doing, not because I can do this, I can see the result of what I have done, but it all boils down to how God can use me, how God can work in and through me. So, I love this picture and this story.
It's interesting that the false magicians could also copy some of the miracles, but in a more inferior way. But it just shows that, there are spirits and they have power, and we have to be careful not to mess or dabble with those kinds of things.
So I had a few, that leads right into several things. So broad categories I talked about, I mentioned that one is that God's demands are non-negotiable and people bringing them to pass. So I do, he said he's going to do this, this is going to happen. And even when Pharaoh changes, it's still going to happen. God uses human obedience to accomplish these plans. Like part of this is like you're talking about Moses and being obedient to God, and demonstrating His power to show that He is God and He'll accomplish saving work for His people. I just had two short kind of fit application thoughts. What is your Nile? What is your source of self-sufficiency that you cling to for security? I think that's. I think we all have these. Sometimes it's reputation. Sometimes it's money or influence, or it can even be popularity. There's a lot of things. But try to identify maybe what's that source of security that you cling to, and then maybe even what ways God is asking us to release our grip on those things, and instead turn to Him and trust Him in His miraculous power to accomplish what He said He's going to do.
Okay, so I think this ends our second episode. So thank you for our insights and our principles, and I hope you have a great day.
Yay!